All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello all, with my credibility glasses firmly in place, we are ready. It is another glorious day, and we are bringing the heat. We're in the middle of March Madness, which is an annual event on this show. If you don't know how it works, we'll explain it briefly. It's pretty easy to understand. And there are already people who have brackets in March Madness who are peacocking about how well they're doing.
What?
Some of those people, one of those people is in my home. Yes.
Yep.
Tied for number 2 in March Madness.
There's never been anything like this.
Maybe you should listen to the show. You know?
Albert is the commissioner of March Madness.
Albert, thank you.
Thank you, Albert, for being here. And Kim just finishing her solo stint.
Kim, how are you?
On Nikki's show. She's here as well. So we are excited about a day that will bring David Katz on to talk about all things Trump legally, but we'll also get to what's happening at the Texas border in the Supreme Court. So all of this as we continue, and welcome all. Yeah. So if you've never had your stuff seized by the state of New York, clap, everybody. Thank you very much. Not a lot of people. Nothing. Personal belongings. No victims of seizures in the crowd. No. All right. Donald Trump is looking at the very real possibility of his stuff being seized. So we'll get to that.
Like Trump Tower?
Well, it could be. I mean, you know, everything's in play. And the problem is you have mortgages, and we can talk to David Katz about this, but you have mortgages and outstanding obligations, debt obligations already. You know, those properties, some of them are, all of them are, they're leveraged. So seizing them becomes a little bit tricky. The countdown is on for asset forfeiture, says Donald the Maine Coon. Yes, the countdown is on for asset forfeiture. Mary can borrow some money from E. Jean Carroll, says Josh.
Maybe not so much.
There you go.
The chat is live.
Idea, but it just might work.
Yeah, well, I mean, Saudi Arabia pays cash, as Trump has noted.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
And he is looking at the Saudis and the Russians to possibly bail them out. I mean, who would think a major candidate of a major party, this candidate for president, could clearly be sniffing around foreign governments and foreign powers to bail him out, and still, he looks like he has a coin flip of a chance of winning the presidency. It's welcome to America, everybody.
What is going on in the United States of America?
Yeah, where is my Ron?
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
That sound problematic.
Yeah, thank you.
I wonder how much Trump Tower is worth.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how much is it?
Google it.
It really is probably Googleable, although I would be skeptical about whatever
came up. Yeah.
Yeah, answers came up. So, Kamish, can you update us on the state of March Madness, please?
I mean, we hear the beautiful Courtney here in the chat and talking along. Hi, Courtney. She is actually doing well. Courtney, and along with our culture blaster, Michael Snyder, both 11-1. So
11 and 1.
Mean, yeah, as I said.
You called 11 correctly. You've only missed 1.
Yeah, well, you should, as I said before, you should listen to the show, Mark.
That's a callback to the fact that I said, Courtney, you don't listen to the show enough to really be able to do well.
And weren't you blaming her for one that you missed?
Exactly.
I was blaming her, I'm sure, for one.
And here
I don't
she's
even remember
11 and
that,
1,
sure
and now
I
you're
was.
blaming her? Please.
Yeah, don't mind my victory lap.
Well, I got
Who is having that conversation?
All right, well, and Albert, just give me a state of the state on yesterday. Albert sounds different today, says M. Oak.
That's not good.
If we have an audio issue? Oh, my God, man. Jeez.
That's a first.
Well, yesterday, I don't think any of the matchups were close. We had a couple runaways yesterday with Seriously WTF and Never Been Anything. So I think that might be a sign that these two drops might be going far this year.
And you've updated the leaderboard and you've updated the drops, right?
I have. Yep.
Okay, so if you have a bracket, you can go there and you can see the latest, which is important.
You can see, and Jennifer is our lone perfect bracket still, but don't feel bad if your bracket isn't doing well. So as long as your pick champion is still in the mix, your pick champion could make you rise to the top quickly.
Albert is so right about that. As long as you're picked to win it all.
I mean, that's where I'm concerned because I'm sort of the lone Oprah what.
Oh, it's Oprah what? You're Murphy Rowan says, I'm 10-2, probably because of a personal choice rather than handicapping what is a likely win. This is a common error that is made, although 10-2 is a pretty good brag. I am, I don't even know what I am.
Mark wishes he was 10-2.
I'm 8-4, okay.
Mark is 8-4, also going with the Oprah what. So the
well, you and I at Oprah what, I'll see you right.
This is in line with Mark's other betting and gambling.
Yeah. True. I don't have a distinguished success record in gambling. I'm 10-2 as well, says Crazy for Cash. After George Santos's Mark's a Liar lost, I don't care anymore.
That was surprising to me. I thought the voting would be a little closer. I thought I had a chance to make it because it's such a cool
I agree.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
Yeah, I thought for sure with the name check and everything that we would do it. Can we view the brackets if we don't have a bracket? Asked Walnut Creek Adult Softball. What is the answer to that, Commish?
That is yes. I will get a screen grab and show everybody right now.
Okay, cool. So we'll take a look at those and we'll have them before the end of the show. This hour, though, it's March Madness. I'm loving it. I'm excited. My favorite time of year. You'll vote now for either.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
No. The other Grady drop.
What he's got going here is a situation.
That's right. What he's got going here is a situation. You'll vote for situation.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Or Jim Avala's.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
All right, so.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Yeah. Or
there's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
All right.
Honestly, that seems low.
Or the other, we're not weighing in on the facts behind the statement, but that is right now what's playing. So one or the other. Grady's situation.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Or the 30%.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
Yeah, so there you have it. One or the other. Only one will go on to the next round, and the competition is tough. These are, next hour there's a real tough one too. But right now, Grady's situation versus 30 to 35% idiots. So good luck on that. Courtney, you're way live. You've done very well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Your contributions to the show are substantial. And
thank you. And now I'm in this house, I'm winning.
You are. You're a winner in this house, which was already...
The bar was low, but I am winning.
Which is already the case, though, I think. You were already winning. There is the bracket.
Like, I'm winning.
Yeah. I mean, you should do what I do, which is listen to the 20-minute segment that I'm on every week.
Yeah.
And that's all.
You're like most people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And most people
This is on every day, right?
Yeah. There you go. All right, Courtney. So much fun to, I think your table's ready.
Thompson, party of 4.
Why don't you go check on that, Courtney?
All right. Well,
Courtney, everybody. Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Albert had the screen grab up there. Go for it again. This is the latest on March Madness. This shows you what won. If you go to the top, the very beginning, this is when the commish was in Taiwan. Good Day, Sir beat Processes Protocols. Sayonara Sucker won as well. So they'll play off in the second round. Chit 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 beat Dr. Phil. CCP member lost. That's Not Fake. Producer No Idea beat Going Back to Texas. Regular Stock lost to Which One of You is Mark Thompson. Word from the Lord lost to Larry King. Pure Speculation lost to Oprah What? Why Are You Yelling won over Simon Hideous. George Santos lost to Ron Owens. What the hell is going on in the United States of America? Never been anything like it. Beat Cheaper and Better. That was Trump on Trump competition. And Cannot Say You Love Your Country yesterday lost to Seriously What the F. So that's where the bracket stands in terms of who's won and what's won. But I keep voting against my own picks, LOL, says Lulu. Well, that definitely is not it's not an established strategy for winning, that's for sure. But anyway, that's the very latest, and we update it from time to time. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, this is I always love seeing something like this in the James. Too slow moving, boring, moving on, let's go, come on, I'm here, my time is valuable, let's go, boring. So welcome, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. Stan Pollock, CPA. Go ahead, put it up there. He's my favorite CPA. Oh. Mark, listening to you even makes tax season better. Stan Pollock, CPA, our favorite CPA, and we love that he threw us a $10 super chat, so thank you, Stan. And there was somebody else up there, but Croquet Film, and I cannot say enough about Croquet. A big shout-out to Stan, and a big shout-out to Croquet Film. It's a double big shout-out.
Big shout-out.
Yeah.
Big shout-out.
Right. Spencer Jaffe, Trump will lose, says Spencer Jaffe with his super chat for $5.
Big shout-out.
He'll lose. He's got... I don't know what you're referring to. He has so many ways to lose. You're talking about the election? Or you're talking about the court
Trump
case
Tower.
in New York? You're talking about the court case in Georgia? You're talking about the court case in Florida? You're talking about the J6 case? Which case? Where will he be losing?
The
Melania?
image is hideous.
Yes. Man, there's a real possibility that Donald Trump would have to satisfy these monetary obligations in some way that would include bankruptcy. We talked to David K. Johnston yesterday about the Trump bankruptcy as a real possibility. He was the first one to really bring it up as something that it wasn't really out there in the media. But the issue for Donald Trump, even with the advantages that bankruptcy would bring, because as you are aware, if you watched yesterday with David K. Johnston, you can go back, the video's there, and he details all of this. I think the Johnston videos are really instructive, and you can go back. I've tried to release a few of them as 60s, as shorts, but he details how that puts everything on hold. It would be another really effective delay tactic, not to mention it lets you off the hook financially, right? Now, it's not an indefinite hold, and there are all kinds of other details as well. But point being, there are advantages to bankruptcy that Trump might very well want to avail himself of. The problem is, and this gets to the point today, is that as Trump has fewer and fewer options to satisfy this debt, and as he really risks seizure of Trump properties, he also faces a political cliff in his mind, according to insiders, if he were to declare bankruptcy. His image, his brand, is one of these brands that's completely imagined. That's something else David K. Johnston has written literally chapter and verse about and has also shared with us. But point is, that brand is desperately valuable to him as a successful businessman. And so the idea that he would have such a public humiliation associated with bankruptcy, he would likely be pilloried by all the people in the world of Democrats and those who just are Trump haters. It would be a really rough ride for him. And that is apparently something that he's very much focused. Pilloried is a ding word. Yes, you're right.
Wouldn't it be, though, isn't it already embarrassing and a loss of his political image for him to not have enough money to pay this debt, to even be talking about bankruptcies? This, by the way, would be the first personal bankruptcy, but Trump has already had 6 corporate bankruptcies in his life that he's filed for Chapter 11 for his company 6 times. So he's no stranger to the bankruptcy.
No, and he would tell you bankruptcy is a legitimate way to reorganize debt, and it's an option open to many Americans, et cetera. There are a lot of spins on bankruptcy, but it would delay for a long time the requirement that he pay the judgment. But, and this is a judgment that's growing at $100,000 a day, and it's a $500 million right now, almost $500 million. So the idea, though, that he would declare bankruptcy, according to insiders, is one that he doesn't like because of the damage it would do to him politically. The plan is to continue fighting in court, according to a Trump spokesperson. And they are even asking in court for a waiver of the bond requirement, and the appeals panel has yet to rule on that. We talked about that here. When we were talking about appeals, I mentioned to you before, I was talking with Kim, that there are two different kinds of appeals going on. One of them is to actually waive the need for the bond. Anyway, we'll talk to David Katz about this, but the idea somehow that Trump would declare bankruptcy seems to be one that he isn't warm to for reasons that have to do with politics, not for reasons that have to do with the practical considerations, because the practical considerations really point to bankruptcy. They allow you to essentially no longer be obligated to satisfy that bond. You could delay it. Again, it's a finite period, but it could be delayed literally for years. So the idea somehow that that wouldn't let you off the hook is flawed. But the idea that that would be okay politically is also flawed. Politically, there'd be a huge price to pay, and that is Trump's worry. Newsweek has a headline that says Donald Trump's running out of time to sell Mar-a-Lago.
I have the question, where's the money? Hasn't he been telling us he's loaded? Hasn't he been bragging about all of his gabillion dollars? Where's the money?
I wanted to speak to that because somebody in comments after hours trading, there are comments, right? When we go off the air, most people watch our show or take in our show after we go off the air, and I read the comments and try to respond, or I note them so that I can respond here on the show. And so it's in that latter category, responding on the show and noting it, that this question. And I asked it of David K. Johnston yesterday, or was it to Tuesday when David comes through, but it wasn't sufficiently answered for one of the people who was commenting again. So I saw this comment. How is it that Trump can claim that he has all of this money? I mean, sort of to what Kim's saying, that you have $800 million in cash and, I got that much on me. No problem, Your Honor. Are you kidding me? Go ahead. You can hit me all day. I'm rich. I'm a billionaire. He claimed to have $10 billion, but in court, he claimed to have close to $1 billion available from what I was seeing. And when it turns out that his lawyers then show up to that same court and they say, oh, actually, we miscounted. We don't have the money. The money's tied up, whatever. How is that not perjury?
Right.
I mean, Trump has said he has the money available. Now he's saying, I don't have that money available. So what was that testimony before? That was a lie. Or a misrepresentation. That would be perjury. So I asked, well, because I wanted to follow up on this very same question, I asked David, and I asked the other David Katz, who will be joining us in the second hour. How come that's not perjury, and how come that's not brought up as perjurable in some way, as actionable, right? That perjury is actionable. And David simply said, Mark, it's a calculation that prosecutors do. Like, is it worth it to bring a fifth charge against him? They just view it as not worth it. So that's really the answer, is yes, you're right in the chat. Those of you who said, hey, isn't he guilty of perjury here? Yeah, probably. I mean, he'd explain or wiggle or whatever, but you could probably nail him on it. But it's sort of like, why? To what end?
Yeah.
So that's really how he skates on that. Perjurable is a ding if it's a word. I'll ding it for now, but you're right. So The idea that Trump would declare bankruptcy again looks to be one that he can't get his arms around, but he also can't get his arms around selling his properties, and something's going to have to happen. He could try offloading some hotels, golf courses for cash, but he's got to do it in a hurry, and those things take a long time. David K. Johnson, again, I released a short with him talking about that, in response to one of your questions. Why doesn't he just sell something? Yep. You just can't sell stuff that quickly, which is another reason that lenders don't want to step up and take any situation with Trump where he needs money, in this case almost $500 million, that's collateralized by property. As I told you the other day, real estate is not what they want. That will be an insane encumbrance. They don't want illiquid assets to collateralize a loan. They want securities, bonds, etc. So Russia and the Saudis need to figure out how to launder their Trump bailouts. Yeah, it really does point to outside influence of some kind, and we will see. Donald Trump's running out of time to sell Mar-a-Lago. There is the headline in Newsweek. So that's the latest on Trump and a little on the bankruptcy. But as I say, we'll have more. David Katz, the esteemed legal analyst and the former federal prosecutor, joins us in the second hour, and we'll follow up on that and more questions when it comes to the law. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
I will tell you that speaking of the law, the Federalist Society is the conservative group. It's largely now run by Leonard Leo, who just got all of this money poured into it. And he's the guy who comes up with that list of Supreme Court nominees, potential list, and also federal judiciary is all populated with the Federalist Society under a GOP administration. So apparently the potential for a second Trump administration has brought Leonard Leo, who runs this Federalist Society, and the Koch network money together. And they are planning, and this is something that did not happen during the first Trump administration, they are planning for all the administrative aspects of a second Trump administration. Remember, during the first Trump administration, they didn't even think they'd win. Trump was really just trying to build his brand. I mean, that was advertised almost by people who had worked for him and were part of that campaign. They didn't have transition people in place. They didn't have anything in place. You had, if you read Michael Lewis's book, The Fifth Risk, he details this, and it's wild, and you almost just can't believe it. There were entire floors of government empty because they literally had not planned on staff and transition. And the way it had worked typically is that when one administration leaves, the next administration is essentially transitioned in with a bunch of briefings. There are all kinds of PowerPoint presentations. They're big. In other words, that transition is something that's important. The Trump people had none of that. They had no one there to take the PowerPoint meeting, no one there to receive the materials. The transition materials were orphaned. They were literally thrown away. So that's not going to happen this time. I mean, they're not so worried about the transition. They are talking about staffing with huge groups of people who are essentially built to take office day one, and they're already doing hiring. They got $55 million from groups linked to conservative activist Leonard Leo and the Koch network. And all this funding from influential conservative donor networks is flowing into groups that are trying to get the second Trump administration going from day one. They have that Project 2025. That's that initiative that, again, is advertised to develop intense conservative policies and recommendations. And again, that's from the Heritage Foundation. They put out that entire document. And so now, if President Trump gets into office, if former President Trump becomes the next president, he will hit the ground running so he can play more golf, and people like Leonard Leo and the Koch network people can actually craft conservative policy from day one. I'll post it to my Twitter feed. It's pretty crazy, but Leonard Leo's network and groups around Leonard Leo have funneled over $50.7 million to the groups advising the 2025 project. It's alarming. If you want to see any sort of liberalism survive, it's alarming. If you're cool with a religious right takeover of government, a complete deregulation of consumer protection agencies, of the Environmental Protection Agency, if you are cool with there being no regulation on your water, on your soil, and the amount of toxins that could be dumped in both, the amount and tonnage of toxins that can be discharged into the air, if you're cool with that, you don't really feel that there should be any regulation on that, then you'll love these guys. They're going to dismantle all of those agencies that are involved in consumer protection, environmental protection, regulation on banking. I think it's a scary proposition, and it's a very real one at that. And they have their act together this time. That's the point I wanted to make. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Notable losses, Kim. M. Emmett Walsh. Albert, can you put a picture of M. Emmett Walsh up?
The name
He's a
doesn't
character
ring a bell.
actor.
Oh,
what's that?
The name doesn't ring a bell. Is he one of these
You'll
people
notice,
you'll know the face?
You'll know his face.
Yeah.
He had, I think, a role that jumped out at me was in a movie called Blood Simple from the Coen brothers. Mm-hmm. And he was also in Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah.
Do you recognize him? Maybe
I do. I do recognize him, yeah.
Maybe grab one of his pictures from one of his movies, Albert, too, if you can.
Yeah, no, I know his face.
Yeah, but I'm just saying also to kind of contextualize it further. But
Google it.
Yeah.
Contextualize should be dinged.
Yes, you're right. Contextualize is a ding word. He is such a significant character actor, was this guy, that Roger Ebert created the Stanton-Walsh rule. So the Stanton-Walsh rule that Roger Ebert created says that no movie featuring either Harry Dean Stanton or the guy you're looking at, M. Emmett Walsh, in a supporting role can be altogether bad. There you see him in a couple of his different roles. There is an old saying, you can't make a bad movie with Walsh in it. Exactly. Interesting that he was a character actor and yet so revered. He was roommates with another high-profile actor, William Devane. In college, he was roommates with him. He appeared in the pilot episode of the Bob Newhart Show also. And the M in his name, what do you think the M in his name? It is a guessable name. What did the M in Emmett Walsh, what did the M stand for? Anybody?
Michael?
Michael is right.
Oh.
Very well done.
I was going to go with Mark. Dang it.
Yeah, it was pretty guessable.
It was either
Mark,
that or
Malcolm,
Maximilian.
and Martin.
Whole bunch
Meredith.
of Marks in there. Yeah, Meredith.
That was really going out on a limb there, Josh. Thank you with the Meredith guess. But anyway, he was 88 years old. And again, I thought he was brilliant in the movie Blood Simple. If you never saw it, it's a terrific noir film from the Coen brothers. You should check it out. The other guy who passed away was, now what's the M in M. Night Shyamalan for, says
that's a great
LJ
trivia.
Guevara.
I don't know.
Do you know that, Albert?
No, I just know that the M might stand for movies were better when he first started.
Movies that haven't been good since the very first one.
Yeah, it's been a tough run for him. I did Google
M.
it,
Night
though.
Shyamalan is interesting because he gets these huge studio deals, and he's really only had one hit, right? I don't know. You'll have to check. I mean, look. Was it The Sixth Sense? That was a huge movie. And off of that, he got, another bunch of movies. And from those, those were tepid films. He never really achieved prominence again, but maybe he did. And you'd have to go back over his filmography. Maybe there were a couple that
Signs. Signs was really good. I enjoyed Signs,
so he was back in it in Signs. Yeah.
It's Minaj.
No, there we go. Very nice. Well done, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
I looked it up on Google.
Yeah, no, I figure you didn't.
I can't take credit. I mean,
I'm trying to think of it. It's like Minaj, I'm going to guess.
Minaj, yeah.
Martin Greenfield. There it is. Minaj Neliatu Shyamalan. The other guy who passed away before Kim's news, I'll just mention this. I mean, he is, you talk about nonpartisan. This guy, Martin Greenfield, he was the tailor to Sinatra, Obama, Trump, and Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, that is impressive as a crew.
What?
95 years old. He dressed 6 presidents. He coached designers and made thousands of suits for TV shows and movies. But, and Shaq. And he, friend to all. But he had a rough ride, man. He survived Auschwitz, the concentration camp. And as a teenager, he was a skinny Jewish prisoner, they say, whose job was to wash the clothes of Nazi guards at the concentration camp.
Oh, man.
In the laundry room one day, he accidentally ripped the collar of a guard's shirt. The man whipped Max in response, then hurled the garment back at the boy. After a fellow prisoner taught Max how to sew, he mended the collar, but then decided to keep the shirt, sliding it under the striped shirt of his prison uniform. The garment transformed his life, they note. Other prisoners thought it signified that Max enjoyed special privileges. Guards allowed him to roam around the grounds of Auschwitz, and when he worked at a hospital kitchen, they assumed that he was authorized to take extra food. Max ripped another guard's uniform, but this time it was deliberate. He was creating a clandestine wardrobe that would help him survive the Holocaust. The day I first wore that shirt, Mr. Greenfield wrote, 7 decades later, he wrote this, was the day I learned clothes possess power. There's a picture of him now. He never forgot the lesson. 2 ripped Nazi shirts, he continued, helped this Jew build America's most famous and successful custom suit company. He died this week. He was 95. A classic tale of immigration to America, agony abroad. He had nothing. He had absolutely nothing when he arrived in America. With workaholic energy, he built a business, made a name for himself. He gained esteem, he gained fortune. And later in life, they say, he finally reckoned with the tragedies of his youth that he had tried to leave behind. The local garment manufacturing business had been in decline for decades from the late 70s on, and he refused to manufacture overseas, never changed his standards. So they were able to offer services that many designers and wealthy suit wearers could hardly find anywhere else. Greenfield Clothiers, it was called. There are some 50 garment workers, each with a particular expertise putting together a single suit. It takes about 10 hours. They operate machinery manually, allowing them to customize every press and fold of fabric, to align patterns over suit jacket pockets flawlessly, and to render fabric stitching invisible. Wow.
He's incredible.
So, yeah. He made, the outfits for Boardwalk Empire. What do you call those? Costumes, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, he did so much work and a long career after suffering immensely in Auschwitz. He passes away at 95. There's more to his story, but that was the summary. It's an extraordinary story. I think I'll post it to my Twitter feed as well. But Max Greenfield passes away at 95. So rest in peace, sir. Both those sirs, and M. Emmett Welsh as well.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim's news, and then we jump back. David Katz, the esteemed legal analyst, joins us in the second hour. We are in the middle of March.
I can't believe it!
Mark's Madness.
I love it. I am crazy for it. It's my favorite time of year, Albert, and we have the commissioner back in the house after his hiatus, so it's very cool to have you here, Commish. In this hour, you vote for one of these two drops. Either
What he's got going here is a situation.
either situation or this.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
Yeah. Idiots or situation. Good luck. How's the voting going so far, Albert?
It's probably our closest vote.
No.
So far. So I'm not going to disclose it. I want to keep our the people in charge of the show kind of like in like not knowing what's going on. So I'm not going to disclose who's leading right now, but it's very close. Those in the chat could see. So make sure you vote there. Vote in the community tab after the show if you want to again. So
That's right. You can see in the chat now, but after we're off the air, which is the way most people take in content, you can vote in the community section of our YouTube channel. You'll go to the Mark Thompson Show channel. It'll say live, shorts, videos, community. You click on community and it's all right there, and you can vote until midnight tonight. Albert riding herd over a very tight race between situation and 30% idiots.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, very, very cool. Smash the like button if you would. Give us a thumbs up. Kim's News as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. There's a sad situation in San Francisco. The infant involved in the deadly accident Saturday in the West Portal area of San Francisco has now died. This baby's brother, 1-year-old brother, and parents were also killed in a crash in this neighborhood when a car jumped the curb and hit the family as they waited for a bus to the San Francisco Zoo. The lawyer representing the driver in this case is a 78-year-old woman, the driver, accused of vehicular manslaughter. She's said to be cooperating with the police. Her family is asking for privacy at this time, but she's accused of driving into a Muni bus shelter, killing this family.
Oh, my God.
So far, they don't know what caused this crash. They're looking to see if it was mechanical trouble with the car. There's a toxicology test still pending. The woman's not under arrest. Again, she is cooperating. She has been released from police custody and does remain hospitalized for her injuries as well. But again, this family of 4 now gone. The New York Attorney General's office filing judgments in Westchester County, very first indication, according to CNN, that the state of New York is preparing to try to seize Donald Trump's golf course and private estate north of Manhattan. It's called Seven Springs. The state lawyers entered the judgment with the clerk's office in Westchester County just 1 week after the judge made his official $464 million decision against Trump, his sons, and the Trump organization as well. So we'll see how that all rolls out. Attorney General Merrick Garland says tech giant Apple has monopolized the smartphone market. Garland announcing in a briefing today the Justice Department, along with a group of state attorneys general and district attorneys, are suing Apple for allegedly violating antitrust laws. Lawsuit claims Apple is blocking competitors from accessing iPhone features. Apple says the lawsuit is wrong on the facts and wrong on the law. A bit of history could repeat itself as a Republican leader plans to invite Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to address Congress. House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNBC's Squawk Box today he'd love for the Prime Minister to address a joint session of Congress. Netanyahu addressed a joint session of Congress in 2015 following an invitation from then House Speaker John Boehner. A recent history seems to be repeating itself as lawmakers once again try to avoid a partial government shutdown. A $1.2 trillion government funding package has been introduced, and Congress has a Friday deadline to get this thing passed. The legislative branch is in danger of running out of funding, as are the defense and the education departments. In Idaho, manhunt still underway. A day after a prison inmate escaped, an alleged accomplice shot 2 Department of Correction officers, and a third officer was shot by friendly fire. The inmate had been in Boise Hospital, and the escape happened as he was being put into a prison van. telling you, it's like something from a movie. Conflicting stories regarding the condition of an Arkansas airport director shot during an exchange of gunfire with police. Authorities were serving a warrant at the home of Brian Malinowski. He's the director of the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport in Little Rock. An ATF agent said Malinowski's injuries are not life-threatening. He and his brother says he was shot in the head and wasn't sure if he'd survive this.
Jeez.
I know.
I mean, serving those warrants, so this is what they always talk about, serving the warrants, domestic violence calls. I mean, law enforcement steps into some pretty dicey situations a lot of the time.
It's true. A Netflix docuseries filmed in an Arkansas jail is facing possible legal problems. The series is called Unlocked, a Jail Experiment. It was filmed last year at the Pulaski County Jail and is expected to be released April 10th, but local officials are raising concerns after they saw the trailer for this series. The docuseries follows inmates given more freedom than being stuck in jail. Local officials were unaware of the shooting in some cases and have raised concerns of the show's content. The Pulaski County Sheriff signed a location release to view and edit the show. A payment of $1,000 a day is being collected for the shooting of that show, which will be placed in the county general fund. A decision hasn't been made on whether to pursue legal action or not.
My bad. I'm sorry.
I mean, come on. You sign the release, you kind of have to take what you get, right? I don't know. It seems to me. And lastly, I will say that the woman who inspired Love Songs by Eric Clapton and then husband George Harrison has put her love letters from Clapton up for auction.
Oh, my God.
I know. Her name
doesn't seem very cool, does it?
What?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, hey, everything has a price. So what if they're love letters that were close to your heart? Now they're close to your wallet.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Seriously, what the
Patty Boyd was married to Harrison from 1966 to 1977 and was the inspiration for the Beatles' Harrison penned song Something. Clapton, who fervently apparently tried to entice her away from Harrison, wrote Layla and Wonderful Tonight for her as well.
Wow. He couldn't get her away from George. Or did he? Yeah.
I don't know.
Man.
Maybe for a hot night or something.
That's an apology you want to, you need.
My bad.
There. I mean,
No context will suffice to explain the hurt and anguish caused by my words.
Exactly. I'm surprised.
In a New York Times interview, Boyd revealed the content of some of Clapton's love letters, including a 1971 letter that said, "If you don't want me, please break the spell that binds me." The love letters are among 111 lots in the Patty Boyd collection.
That's what I wrote to Kim in a text this morning. It was very,
You don't want me, please release me.
Yeah, maybe time to release me.
Sayonara, sucker!
Yeah, thank you.
It was signed Sayonara, sucker. Yeah.
Right.
What we have here is a situation. The love letters are among 111 lots in the Patty Boyd collection. They've been up for auction on Christie's. The online auction ends early Friday. So if you wanted to get your hands on those love letters, I don't know why anyone would want someone else's letters.
Thank you. I can't understand. Give me the creeps.
I mean, they're rock and roll memorabilia, I guess, but that's personal stuff.
Then again, okay, I mean, maybe because of sort of the recent nature of these characters we're talking about. In other words, George Harrison, Eric Clapton, these are people, Patty, whatever her name is, the woman
Patty
who,
Boyd.
yeah. If I told you I have a love letter from Beethoven to his lover in Austria or something, and it's going up for auction, you might not be creeped out quite the way you're being creeped out about this. See what I'm saying? I mean, like it just, maybe in another 150 years, it'll feel like, oh, I get it, because Harrison at the time was one of, the seminal figures in rock and roll, and as was Clapton, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it does, put, if that's your favorite song or whatever, I guess it puts that into perspective, how he was feeling about her, all these other things. I don't know. There she is, Patty Boyd. That's many years ago.
Yeah.
She is beautiful, but it just seems oogie to, I mean, maybe if you need money, everything's for sale, but it seems oogie to sell your personal, private,
it's an odd brag
letters.
too. Like, oh yeah, I have these people's love letters that I have no relation to.
Thank you. That's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, it's that's the part that really seems weird to me. What do you, What's this? Oh, yes, I bought this at an auction. It's an intimate communication between Eric Clapton and Patty Boyd. No, you didn't feel weird about that?
That's her claim to fame. You know, I don't know.
She was quite the rock and roll groupie isn't that right, Albert? Do you have, you can Google her, and there's considerable information about Patty Boyd. And she is believe quite the
She got a lot of attention, that's for sure. A lot of people fell
in love. The boys liked her.
Yeah, they did. They liked her very much. So that was her then, and this is her now. She still looks pretty good, have to say.
Yeah, she looks great.
Now. Yeah.
She looks great. Looks
Murphy
like she's
says,
about to go. That's right before her shopping spree that will be permitted by her selling the communications that she received, the intimate communications that she's decided to share with the world.
Everybody needs that new Louis Vuitton, all right?
Yeah.
Don't judge.
Well,
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Maybe the Saudis will buy that for you, Mr. President. Yeah.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm drinking the hibiscus iced tea today. So good. It is a place to get the good stuff in your Mark Thompson Show coffee mug. Fill her up and your morning becomes amazing. A huge selection is on the website at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You've got the espressos, you've got the coffees, you've got the teas, and they have tea bags, no plastic, no metal. Great tea bags for the loose leaf tea there as well. You can get your exclusive 10% discount just for being a listener of the Mark Thompson Show. When you fill up your cart, your robust cart, at the end, there right at the code, Mark T, just like Albert's doing right there. Mark T at checkout, you get your 10% off, and then all your coffee and tea arrives on your porch, and it's a happy, happy day.
It's pretty great, I have to say.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the moment when the Coachella Valley coffee box arrives, there's, shouts of joy at the front door. It's here.
Yeah. It was great.
It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it when it arrived here. Yeah.
Our thanks to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
We love
I'm
them.
Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
My wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
Emil Schaffhausen, a salad.
Jada had nothing to do with it.
I completely disagree.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. And this is their new hoax.
Why are you yelling?
You do not know what you are talking about.
It was great. I loved it.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
Seriously, what the
Right on, everybody. It is another great day in the world of this show. This time of year is unlike any other time of year. It is my favorite time of year for one reason.
Mark's Madness.
It is a classic matchup, and it's close this hour. If you're watching live, jump in the chat. You'll vote for either.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Or
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
That's right. Either situation.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Or
there's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
You can vote live right now. Good luck. And then after this, you can vote in the community section. After this hour ends, we close the live voting for those two. And you can vote in the community section until midnight tonight. And Albert, who is the commissioner of March Madness, will tally them up and will update things tomorrow.
Albert, thank you.
There are still a lot of people very much alive who filled out brackets for this. Now,
do you not say which one you like better because you don't want to influence the vote?
Exactly. I don't want, and I know people vote against me. Whatever I say. Oh yeah, people vote against me. Oh, I truly, like everybody always takes the opposite side of me. Okay. So like when I give you a hard time, people go, "How come you give Kim such a hard time?" When I give Albert,
yeah,
it's a very biased, and I understand it. So I get it. Mark wants a certain drop to do well, so let's vote against it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I oddly am not bothered by that. I just understand it. But you're right. I'm not saying anything for that reason. I don't want to screw people who, have.
Because I didn't know if we were supposed to say which one we like better. So I
which one you use, Mark Thompson?
I'll chit on myself over here.
The which one of you is Mark Thompson drop is so funny because it was a guy at a listener event. And I'd only just started there at KGO. And it was myself, Armstrong and Getty, Ron Owens, Chip Franklin on the panel. I think that was it. Maybe Nikki was on the panel. I don't think she was.
Pat Thurston?
Oh,
Pat Thurston.
Pat was
Absolutely. I knew that there was a woman on the panel. Exactly. Pat Thurston. She's terrific. We love Pat. So, anyway, so I'm there on the panel with them, and then all of a sudden...
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
Yeah. And this guy gets up from the audience, and he says, "Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?" And I raised my hand, and I said, "Yes." He said, How can you call people, and he had some name that I've never called anyone that name ever. Plus, I don't do the kind of show where I call people names. Like I don't call him the Orange Man or all that stuff. That was Chip who did that stuff. I didn't do that. I don't call people names. So, and Chip, to his credit, stood right up and he said, "That wasn't Mark, that was me. I called him that." And then it was on. But that was just the greatest moment, and it turned into the greatest drop. Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson? So that's where that came from. Yeah. I wanted to mention a weird thing that happened. The wife of Mitch McConnell is this woman,
Elaine Chao, right?
Elaine Chao. She was the Secretary of Transportation under Trump.
Right.
She is from an extremely wealthy family. I mean, they're super wealthy. They're, believe in the shipping business. You can check this, but I'm almost certain they're in the shipping business.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so
Google it.
No, I'm right. I just sometimes I say I think that something, and it's true. Okay, I don't know why I do that. Yeah. Anyway, so she became Trump's Secretary of Transportation, and we had our way with that at the time. Mitch McConnell, as you know, had the essentially immediate benefit of having his wife in this position where she could funnel tons of money to his state for all kinds of transportation projects. It was an absolute. It was just like insider trading. It was obscene. But I mentioned that just to kind of establish who she was, to remind you who she was. Well, her sister is also very wealthy, right? The same family, shipping magnates, right? The whole family is just rolling in loot.
Also very successful. I think the sister is a CEO of some company. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's true. I mean, she, even though she started on third base, she might have, been able to get there on her own. I don't know. But more to the point, that sister is now dead. That sister had been driving her Tesla during a girls' weekend. I don't know why it's important that it was a Tesla, by the way. Whenever anybody has an accident with a Tesla, they always go, "Oh, another Tesla accident. This accident on the 101 with Tesla. The 10 freeway was the site of a Tesla accident today." Normally, they wouldn't say, right, a Kia rollover. They would never say that. Anyway, she wasn't a Tesla, though. And she was, during her girls' weekend, She was driving her Tesla on her property, and she drove it into a lake. It was, maybe it's more of a pond than a lake, but apparently it's a sufficient enough body of water to consume the car and for her to drown. She had called her friend that she had just had dinner with in Blanco County, Texas. This is all at her ranch in Blanco County. And said, I love you. And then, again, the car was inundated with water, and she was killed. The women had just had dinner that evening at the guest lodge on the property. They wrapped up around 11:30, and I know what you're asking, and I'm going to answer that question in a second. The dinner attendees, who were all friends of hers that were women, say that they were all in good spirits during the get-together. She left the lodge. This is all because of surveillance footage on the property. They know exactly where everybody was at whatever time. She had a blanket wrapped around her and her cell phone held to her ear. A pond on the property was located between the guest house and the main house. Chow and her Tesla reversed into and over a limestone barrier wall, entering the water. The Tesla then floated to the center of the pond. At around 11:42, she called one of her friends she just had dinner with and calmly said that she was in the pond. She said that her feet were underwater. In a calm voice, this is a quote, Chow informs her friend that she is not able to get out of the vehicle. She says the water was rising and she was going to die and said, I love you, prior to going under the water. The phone call lasted about 8 minutes.
Oh, my God. To hear her last minutes like that? Oh.
Another friend who was at the property got into the pond, swam toward the Tesla, and two other friends got into kayaks and paddled toward the car. When law enforcement arrived, Chow and the car had been in the water for about 21 minutes, they say. The vehicle submerged about 25 yards from the shore. After several failed attempts, responders were able to remove her from the vehicle at about 12:56 a.m. They did CPR, but they could not revive her. A toxicology report. This might have been what many of you are asking.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of shape is she in? It seems like a weird accident. And a toxicology report found that her blood alcohol concentration was almost 3 times the legal limit.
A lot of margaritas at that girls' weekend. Shouldn't be driving your Tesla after that.
On your own property, an area that you should know, and
I mean,
sadly,
that's drunk. 3 times the legal limit?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. Brutal. Brutal. That is a bit of bizarre news, I think. It falls in the category of bizarre. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. I have a little law and disorder. Can I do it before David Katz gets here, Albert?
Yeah.
What's our situation?
Yes, so law and disorder. Then we got to do our next hour of drops as well.
Oh, what time is it? Like, I'm not really...
it is 12:02 at this moment.
On the West Coast, it's 12:02, everybody. Please. Well, then, I will, I suppose we will do the next hour of drops first, then, because it does just kick off right now. Let me just get an idea of...
And I will.
This
end
is going to
this,
be. This is going to.
I will end this previous hour's votes, and I'll just share the results with you while you're prepping.
Oh yeah, we can. Okay, good. So yeah, please, Albert, you can right now before we get to the second hour's competition. Kamish, can you tell us how the voting went on the first hour? Remind us.
It was a little closer, and then towards the end, 30 to 35% idiots did pull away. So that's just for the live vote. So remember, you can vote after hours.
Yeah, this could change, but right now in the live vote, it was the idiots.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
That is ahead of
what he's got going here is a situation.
Yeah, Grady, Sheriff Grady. So 57 to 42%. Okay, thank you for that. So again, in the community section of our YouTube channel, you can continue to vote for that showdown. But now...
I can't believe it! Mark's Madness!
I can't believe we've got two more. How about it? You will vote for either...
Can you let him finish, sir?
Let him finish, or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is tough. Again, vote for either...
Can you let him finish, sir?
Yeah, or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
Finish.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
Vote right now live in the chat, and as I say, till midnight tonight in the community section of our YouTube channel. Good luck! Wow.
That's a hard one.
That is a real tough one. Don't know how to handicap it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Really don't know. Into hour 2 of our show, we are here live with you for 2 hours, Monday through Friday, and appreciate all your support. We're kind of on a sort of PBS NPR model where we live because people subscribe to our show through Patreon and PayPal. When I say subscribe, they just support. We offer the show for free, but the people who pay for this show are our Patreon and PayPal supporters. There's a click through to Patreon and PayPal under most of our videos, and under this video there will be, if there isn't already. So I encourage you to click and support us. There'll be some other ways to support us, I think, maybe coming later this year. But for the moment, that's a great way to support us. And, of course, all of you who are so generous with super stickers and super chats live on YouTube and even after hours on YouTube, that is a great way to support the show as well. So truly appreciate it. And as I say, we exist solely because of your generosity. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't know if you saw it, and I am going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up. I am going to be bringing it up, is what I was going to try to say. I am going to be bringing it up with David Katz. The situation with the star Dodgers player.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it?
It sure is. And I think the Shohei Ohtani, who has this interpreter who's been embroiled now in a gambling accusation and actually an accusation involving the stealing of money to pay off gambling. I think there's more there than meets the eye, and it's very possible that this interpreter is kind of taking the fall. But I want to talk to David Katz about that. He is going to weigh in on that. So when David arrives, I'll ask him about this. But if you don't know, essentially there's a star athlete, Shohei Ohtani, who has been a star athlete and in Major League Baseball now for a few years, but now has sort of achieved another profile of, shall we say, another higher status, higher profile, because he's become almost... How would you describe him, Albert? Almost like no other figure in the history of baseball.
Yeah, he's like a unicorn. He's truly is a unicorn, a pitcher and a batter. He's not going to be pitching as much this season because he got injured, but he's a two-way player, but not only just a two-way player. He's very, very good at both, which it's hard to think of being good at both, but it's kind of like it's greedy about how good he is with both.
Yeah, and it's he's right. Albert is right. He's a star in both things he does, pitching and hitting, which is really
everything he does. I think he makes so much more money in advertising worldwide. He just announced his wedding to a very famous basketball player back in Japan, and that was like it took that nation by storm. It was like the biggest news in baseball, which is like weird to think of. It's some guy from Japan, and then I think you mentioned the interpreter's been with him since 2018, since he got to baseball. The same interpreter has been shoulder to shoulder, side to side with him, literally just interpreting and being his best friend. So
sorry, go ahead.
You don't think there's some type of maybe cultural or language barrier that allowed him to be taken advantage of?
That'll all come out, but I don't know. And when you say, that's certainly one scenario. There's also the one that I sort of posited, which is that the guy who's the interpreter is taking the fall for the superstar. We'll ask David Katz about it, but he was more than just an interpreter. They used to throw on the side together. He was so he's catching in the bullpen for him. He's throwing him balls and hitting in batting practice. In other words, they're doing baseball stuff together as well. So it had to be on some level like cutting his right arm off to get rid of this guy. On the other hand, he is making so much money. There's so much money on the line. And it's more than that. It's the franchise's reputation. It's baseball's reputation. There's a lot to this story. And so getting rid of the interpreter in that context looks like a pretty easy decision that you have to make. Again, Katz will share some thoughts on this.
He's here. I think he just popped in.
Yeah, so I'll talk to David about that. Smash the like button if you would. Thumbs up for the first hour.
Smash it with your iron rod.
David Katz will join in a moment.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy is a brilliant legal analyst. You hear him across British media. You see him on television, on Fox 5 in New York, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. All the major media cities are trying to get a chunk of David Katz because he is so brilliant in breaking things down and giving you the legal realities on any number of issues. We'll try to get to as many as we can today. How about it for the former federal prosecutor, David Katz, now the defense lawyer working here in California, in Southern California.
Good to be
David,
with you,
yes.
Mark.
Great to see you. You look just like you do on television. It's really cool to you have been a busy kid, haven't you? Wow.
Well, I haven't. One of the most interesting ones is last Wednesday. This is before the judge in Atlanta had ruled. On Wednesday, I was on a really right-wing station, but the presenter's always been very fair to me. He lets me tell my side of the story. I was on with somebody deep in the Trump campaign on the other side. And they were crowing about the fact that the judge had thrown out 6 of the charges against Trump and some of his co-defendants down in the Atlanta state case. And of course, they were trumpeting that it was a harbinger of 2 days later, he was going to throw Fani Willis off the case. And I said to them, hold the celebration, because I think the fact that the judge wanted to get to that issue on Wednesday that you're crowing about shows that he's not going to bring this case to its knees on Friday, because if he were going to bring it to its knees on Friday, which is what would have happened if he'd have thrown Fani Willis off the case, I also predicted that he would throw the special prosecutor effectively off the case, which is what happened. So as I always say, it's hard to predict, especially the future, and even harder when people are poo-pooing you right to your face. But that's why it's actually fun if they're fair to you. I used to be on with Laura Ingraham a little bit, and Laura was not fair to me. She cut me off and wouldn't let me say what I wanted to say. But they actually did, and this is a big right-wing medium, a la Fox at night. But they were very fair to me, and they let me tell my side of the story. And I think it's really important. My friend Adam Schiff said years ago, you need to go on right-wing media. You need to not just have an echo chamber on the left and an echo chamber on the right. If they'll invite you on, go on. And there were some people there who just thought Fani Willis had done was terrible, and any judge in America would throw her off the case. What he did do the other day, Mark, is allow an appeal, but he didn't stay the case. So he's proceeding with all the case down there in Atlanta, Georgia, as against the 10 or 11 defendants who are left, including Trump, Giuliani, Meadows. But at the same time, he's allowing them to bring an appeal at the same time. So if the appeal court rules in their favor and they say that Fani Willis should be taken off the case in her whole office, then of course it'll grind to a halt at that point. But while they do their briefing, and we haven't seen some of this in the federal system, right, Mark? We've seen it quite differently. But while they're doing the briefing in the state appellate court, everything in the state court is going to proceed in the trial court. And then if they agree with the judge that Fani Willis, while what she did showed tremendously poor judgment, as he said, but she can still stay on the case because she does not have an actual conflict of interest, then everything will roll along. Do I doubt that this case will really go to its very long trial and to a verdict before November? I think by now that's impossible that it would go to a verdict by November down in Atlanta. So anyway, just a side note on that.
No, that's interesting. That's really interesting, actually. I always wonder, to what extent, as you say, you can be in right-wing media, and it's probably smart, as your pal Adam Schiff suggests, to show up in right-wing media. But if you're just going to be, pilloried and not allowed to get a word in edgewise, then, why do it? I have questions for you from the chat, and I have questions from you
Go for it.
That we've been sitting on. But I also just want to dovetail with what we were just speaking of. I know it's not in the course of politics and the future of America necessarily the top legal story, but it is from the standpoint of breaking news in the last couple of days. This Dodger star, Shohei Ohtani, okay, we were just talking about this. His interpreter has been fired. There are accusations that the interpreter stole millions from Ohtani to place bets with an illegal gambling operation. This all just came to light, and it's a very high-profile situation both for Ohtani and for baseball. And I was just suggesting, I know there's no way for you to really know this, but maybe you can just give me some sense of this unfolding case, what's legal, what's not. I was suggesting that maybe he's being made the fall guy for what might be actual gambling on the part of the star, of Ohtani. Your thoughts?
Well, that would be a huge story if that's what ends up happening. One of the suspicions I've had, they keep saying, well, there was no betting on baseball. And the translator, that's his story. And he's told quite a few different stories just in the last couple of days. But he keeps saying the one thing he's consistent on is that he never bet on baseball. But, you know, if you're desperate for money and by now somebody's in the hole $4.5 million and the sport they know best is baseball, you really are worried that maybe there was some betting on baseball. Why bet on college football and the NHL when you're in and out of baseball every single day? And of course, that would bring you into the area that's in some ways even, worse than Pete Rose. It's kind of like the Black Sox scandal of 100 years ago. And of course, they were wonderful, loved players, but they fixed the World Series because they were under the control of gamblers. And, talk about speaking to the choir. We have the station that shall not be named that decided to throw their lot in with sports betting tips and not with the great reporting that you were doing, that John Rothman was doing, that Pat Thurston was doing on that station. Suddenly went to this sports betting. Sports betting's very lucrative. I think that MGM Grand was behind this. And there's an MGM Grand aspect to all of this, Mark, because just to give you a little bit of history, it's a fascinating case that actually begins with my old office, the Central District of California and federal prosecutors. If Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger who hits the stand in federal court, he may be the first Dodger since Tommy Lasorda. I called Tommy Lasorda to the stand. He hadn't done anything wrong, but he was a necessary witness in the case. I called Tommy Lasorda to the stand in federal court back in 1989. I know before some of your viewers were born, and I'd love to tell that story sometime. But the story here is that there was a gambling operation. Actually, Yasiel Puig, the famous Cubano, the Cuban outfielder for the Dodgers, and then he went to the Reds. He was also involved in that investigation. His case is actually up in the Federal Court of Appeals, but it has to do with this gambling ring of ex-baseball players, some minor leaguers, I think some major leaguers, and they had this gambling business. Now, you might say, how on earth could any normal person have a gambling business and compete with the MGM Grand and compete with the sports bookmakers? And bear this in mind, sports bookmaking is legal in about 40 states. You can just get on your phone if you're a young man or young woman, but unfortunately, it's an addiction that often hits young men. And you can bankrupt yourself. You can sit right there on your phone, bet on games, bankrupt yourself, tell your family you're coming home without your paycheck. In my opinion, the Supreme Court ruling about 5 years ago that allowed this to proliferate against the will of many states, I thought was a huge mistake. But anyway, here we are. And you might say to yourself, how do you compete? And here's how you compete, Mark. You give credit. The casinos don't give credit, but the illegal bookmakers, the unlicensed bookmakers, they give you credit. So this gang gave credit, and one of them got raided by the federal authorities, this investigation handled by the Central District of California. He got raided last October, and then they get all the computers and they get the betting sheets, and lo and behold, this interpreter is on there. And then there's apparently 2 transactions of about $500,000, which have Shohei Ohtani's name on it. Now, many, many things could be true of these $500,000 betting slips. That was real live money that got paid to this bookmaker. They could have been paying off the marker, right, of the interpreter, and it could have been Ohtani making him a loan. It could have also been all the possibilities. It could have been Ohtani's money, and Ohtani was the one betting, and that this was just his fall guy. This was his straw guy who was putting up the bets for him. And it could have been, several other things. It could have been one of the stories of the interpreter, Mark, was that he went to Otani and told him, I'm a gambling addict. I'm so sorry. I put all this money in. And of course, you're always worried how the extrajudicial methods of collection of some of these guys who you get in a hole to over $1 million on bets. The old joke in New York was, you see a guy hobbling around on one knee, he got collected on. I'm not saying that these guys collected that way. I'm saying if you go to your friend and you say, look, I owe $4.5 million, and he's really your friend and he has a $700 million contract on the horizon, he might lend you the money. So his story was on ESPN, this translator, that's exactly how it went down, that he went to Otani. He told him he owed all this money, that Otani hadn't bet any money on baseball, that he, the interpreter, had, and now he was way in the hold to these illegal or unlicensed gamblers, and would he bail him out, and that the money is to bail him out. Before that story could actually hit, I guess Otani lawyered up. He got some local LA lawyers. The LA lawyers put out a statement on behalf of Otani that said that he was the victim of a theft. Presumably, the $4.5 million, his story is, was stolen from him, embezzled from him. And that raises all these kinds of questions, Mark, which is why I love federal criminal law. I love both sides of it. But some of the questions are, how do you steal $4.5 million from somebody? Do you do it all at once and they notice $4.5 million is gone? Do you do it 20 times every time that you're betting and the person never knows that 20 different amounts of money is missing? And so there's an awful lot of explaining to do. Nobody wants to answer questions anymore. The alleged gambler's lawyer put out a very succinct story that he, the gambler, did not know Otani. This fellow, the interpreter, has put out very many stories. He's been fired. He was making about $300,000 or $400,000 himself, by the way. He worked for the Angels as an interpreter, and then he worked for the Dodgers as an interpreter. And then Otani is not speaking, and manager Roberts is not speaking. So that's about where we are. But I love this story. It combines baseball, my favorite sport, and federal criminal defense, one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, and I think that you ask a really great question. By the way, big shout out to Ron Cook, who gives us a super sticker.
Big
for 20.
shout out.
I wonder how it's possible to steal $4.5 million. So you'd need to, it almost suggests no other explanation but that he was given the money under a false pretext. If you are creating this story and narrative about how, I, the translator, had the problem and my pal was just bailing me out, he'd have to have been doing that with one fell swoop, I think. But when they say stolen, it's like, stolen how? I mean, if he asked him for the bailout and he gave him the bailout, it wasn't stolen. So it's weird. I mean, if that's the story they're going with, stolen, then I think your question is a really compelling one. What do you mean stolen? How was it stolen? Over what period of time? Fascinating.
I think it also raises the question, and then I know there's other things you probably want to talk about, but I think it also raises, just a whole lot of questions about, why has baseball, like football, made its deal with the devil, with this commercial gambling? Obviously, they want the money so bad, but, a couple of times baseball has almost been destroyed by scandals. Attendance was way down after the steroids thing. People thought that was just ugly and awful. And, some people who would have been great players, in my opinion, like Barry Bonds, didn't need steroids. He might not have had quite those numbers, but he was a great player before it's ever alleged that he used steroids. But it really hurt the game. And I was not alive then, Mark. I want it clearly understood during the Black Sox scandal. But that almost destroyed baseball. And they had to have some really strict rules. And maybe baseball has to have this rule that it doesn't want to move a franchise to Las Vegas, that it doesn't want to get so close to all of this gambling stuff. You have the whole thing with shaving points and everything else. And if people start to think that the game isn't really kosher, what does Trump say? It's rigged, it's fixed. But games can be rigged and fixed, especially when you're betting numbers. So you don't have to throw the game. You just have to shave points, shave runs, give up a home run to a guy in the 8th inning of a meaningless game. And if people come to feel that way about the sport, I don't know. But for now, they've made their deal with the devil. By the way, I don't know if it's still worth that, but they say the opening day, Dodger Stadium, when they actually open in Los Angeles, $565 to get in. Don't bring your kids. Don't bring your kids on opening day unless you're a real one percenter.
Well, again, the reason that this is a story worth spending any time on is because of this figure. He's a transformational figure in baseball. And as you suggest by that last comment, the Dodgers will make a fortune. I know he's making a fortune. Dodgers will make multiples of that fortune off of the revenue that comes in around Ohtani. Now, we'll follow this. Screw baseball, says Phineas. I want to know about Judge Cannon telling the jurists to ignore the law. Can you speak to now the Judge Cannon judge is in Florida, right? That's the document case.
Yes, the documents that this national security documents that Trump took out of the White House had no business to take, hid all over Mar-a-Lago, said they weren't there. Then the FBI went in, and lo and behold, despite the certifications and the statements by his own lawyers, who'd apparently been bamboozled by Trump, that they were not there. Of course, the FBI came in and found loads and loads of them. Those are the ones with the red and gold labels that we've all seen. You could see just from looking at them that they were highly secure national security documents. Worse than that, obstructing justice, not giving them back, playing games, misleading the government. He also apparently flaunted them, flashed them at people, and talked about the only defense that he has on that charge, that he not only had and failed to give back highly sensitive national security documents, and that he then showed them to people and bragged that he had them in his hand, was that he's a huge liar, and all he had was his lunch menu in his hand, and he flashed that around as though they were national security documents. When that's your best defense, you may be Donald Trump.
So what about this judge? Look at this. Deeply problematic. Experts question judge's intervention in Trump inquiry. Aileen Cannon under fire as Trump witnesses speak out. Disturbing. A thorough rebuke of Judge Aileen Cannon's pro-Trumper order. Florida federal judge Aileen Cannon slammed by appeals court in Trump case. Can you speak to this asking both sides to come up with juror instructions?
Well, one of the great things that I love about America is that, the judge in the Washington, D.C. case, Judge Chutkan, was born, I think, in the Caribbean islands, maybe Jamaica. And Judge Cannon was born in Colombia, the country of Colombia. And, that people can come to this country and can do so well is great, This is Judge Cannon. So I don't hold it against her that she's from Colombia. I don't hold it against her that she was a former assistant U.S. attorney, which I was myself. But she seems very Trumpy. She was picked by Trump toward the end of his term. She's down there right up the road. When he had the search warrant that was executed, he found a way to go around the magistrate judge and try to run to her courtroom, where he knew he was going to have her because she was the only judge up there in Fort Pierce, just north of Mar-a-Lago. And then she made two rulings, Mark, which were both so bizarre, having to do with the search, that she was reversed by very conservative pro-government judges on the circuit. And it's so interesting that I say that, because conservative and pro-government used to mean the same thing with judges during the era that I was an assistant U.S. attorney. And now the irony is that it's the government that's making these very normal searches, very normal filings in front of her. And she seems to do two things. First, she ruled against them and got overturned twice. So people are thinking that the third time is not the charm. So they're thinking that all she wants to do now is delay things, that she wants to find the way to sit there and contemplate, think about it, hear it some more. As long as she doesn't have a ruling, the only thing that they can, if she makes a strong ruling for Trump, they can go to the federal appellate court again, Mark, and they can try to have her not only reversed this time, the third time, but thrown off the case as someone who just has brought a bias to the case. And now it's evident from the third time that they go to the appellate court. So she's smart enough to want to avoid that. And so it's just a kick the can down the road. It's just to run out the clock. And if all the experts now see the case in that perspective, is this something that really helps get the case to trial and to move it along? Or is this something that tends to run out the clock? And these latest rulings seem like they're just running out the clock.
So you're saying even as they're bizarre and they just now fall into that category and there's little recourse. I mean, it's just as you say, she's watching not to be so outrageous so as to talk of replacing her in any way on this case, I mean, but she's able to be outrageous enough to, essentially create a time killer, which is what he wants, right? A delay.
The federal appellate courts, when they review a matter, have the right to send it back to a different trial judge. but it's not on the criterion that your listeners and viewers might think, just, well, they've made a third mistake. That certainly helps trying to get a new judge assigned to the case, that the same judge has now made a third mistake. But it's something about the ruling, something about an expression of bias on the record or stuff like that. And I think that she's been very careful about that. And she's hung her hat on the fact that there are multiple defendants in that case. They sort of felt like they needed the multiple defendants because Trump did things by giving orders. Remember, he mainly, one idea it looked like that was floated around, and I use floated around intentionally, was to drain the overflow the swimming pool, and then have the swimming pool flood the documents room, and all the computers would be destroyed. You know, it reminds me of the old joke, and Trump is, of course, a New Yorker. I'm sure he's heard this joke when he was a kid like I did. Do you mind if I tell a joke real quick?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so there's three guys who are in trouble with the board. And the first guy comes in and he says, well, I told the examiners that, we had a big fire. All the documents went up in flames last night. The other guy who's being called to the inquiry, he says, well, that's amazing, because I told the board that, we had a big flood last night, and all the documents were they were washed away. And the third guy says, yeah, I went in there and told them that we had an earthquake. And the other two say, how do you fake an earthquake?
All right, so now to that's canon. Let's quickly touch base on Georgia and the Fani Willis situation.
Well, I touched on it in the beginning, Mark, that the trial is going ahead.
And you think that, right,
with Fani and whoever she puts on it from her office. I thought it might be a good idea to get a special prosecutor. Remember, they tried to have that former Republican governor of Georgia. He testified during the Fani Willis hearings because the special prosecutor was supposed to be the head of a search committee. He was the head of a search committee, and he genuinely tried as the head of the search committee not to hire himself, but to hire this former Republican governor. And the Republican governor got on the stand at the hearing and he said, look, I didn't want to have my life threatened for the rest of my life. I'm an older person. I want to spend the rest of my life happily. And, it was obvious from what he was saying, not having some Trump deranged people who are not understanding that, we're living in a democracy, and you win and you lose, and you try to win the next one. If you lose the last one, it would retaliate against him. And he didn't want the case. So it may be that by now, to get a special prosecutor in there just is going to take too much time. I'm sure she has some very fine assistant district attorneys in her office. Give it to them. And my advice to her would just be, have them move this ball forward. Stay out of it yourself. Okay. No one says that because you're still the head of the office that you have to personally run this case. And she can say, look, I'm running my office. I'm running for re-election. I put this in the hands of the best people in my office, and they're moving the case to resolve the motions and to have a trial just as soon as possible. That's what I would do if I were her. And I think she probably is going to survive all these other inquiries, because I think at the end of the day, she did not have an actual conflict of interest. Again, She made herself and that office look terrible with her tremendous lapse in judgment. I agree with that. But the case is not about her. The case is about Donald Trump and his co-defendants and what they did to steal the election down there in Georgia, which included a taped phone call. This case has the best piece of evidence of probably all of these cases. They have Trump getting on the phone when he knows he's more than 11,000 votes behind. There's been a count. There's been a recount. There's been no issues at all of fraud or anything else. He just plain lost. And that's when he calls up and in his own voice says to that Secretary of State down in Georgia, find me 11,500 votes. It's devastating on top of all the other evidence they have against him, Giuliani, Meadows, you name it.
All right, then, and I will double back and get to this question. I guess I'll just get to it now, Paul, and then I want to get to New York and the money and the likely seizure, and can you trace money if you were to be rescued? I'll get to all of those questions in a second with David Katz. This question from Paul: how can an appointed federal judge be removed? Cannon doesn't seem to be qualified for her judgeship.
Well, they can try to impeach her. Remember trying to impeach Donald Trump with the overwhelming evidence of the January 6th insurrection, and they couldn't get enough Republicans in the Senate to vote that he should be removed from office. So they're not going to get them on Cannon. So that's not going to happen. if the Judicial Circuit thought that she was really disabled, either physically or mentally in some way, they could reduce her docket. That's not going to happen. And so the only way she could be removed from this case, which I think is what your questioner is asking, is again, if one of her cases went up to the appeals court and the appeals court said, we're not only reversing her, but enough of this already. She's just not trying to get it right in the opinion of that appellate panel. Then they would send it back to a different judge. There's lots of them. It's a big area. Fort Pierce isn't big, but that district, we talked about that entire district of Southern Florida includes Miami, Fort Lauderdale. There's loads of other judges. They pick one at random, and that would be the new judge on the case if the circuit court removed her.
It's very hard to remove a judge. I remember the story that I shared with everybody who is a viewer or listener to the show about the older judge, very old, who is now kind of losing it a little bit, and they try to reduce the docket the way you suggested, David Katz, but he still is aware that his docket isn't as full as it should be, and he gets angry about it, even as he is sadly kind of segueing into Looneyville, and they still are unable to remove that guy. Now I'm thinking, wow, I mean, you have demonstrable evidence. I remember the article just had example after example of him really kind of losing his mind, and yet there was a real problem with trying to remove him, and he was certainly not going to go on his own. So it for me embodied a bit of what you're talking about, which is the difficulty in actually removing somebody from the bench. Let me just ask you about
the theory, Mark, is that they're given protections that will allow them to stand up to an overbearing government, to an enormous corporation trying to throw their weight around. And of course, some people look at some of the federal courts and think, wow, that's unbelievable to see so many judges ruling for the government and for the huge corporations. But the idea was to give them protection so they could really stand up and be independent, be a separate branch of government.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. New York Attorney General now taking initial steps to prepare to seize Trump assets is the headline. The New York Attorney General's office has filed judgments in Westchester County, the first indication that the state is preparing to try to seize Donald Trump's golf course and private estate north of Manhattan known as Seven Springs. Can you speak to this process? And then I have a question about bailout money coming from the Saudis or Russians or another source, and would that be revealed in court as to the source of those funds?
Well, to answer your first question first, the way that we got here was nothing unfair. First of all, this happens all the time. It happens, for instance, in criminal cases. If you think about it, somebody loses at trial and then they want to get out on bail pending appeal. Of course, as a federal criminal defense attorney now doing a lot of white collar cases, I've been in that situation where somebody gets convicted by the jury, but you think you have a great argument on appeal and you want to keep the person out on bail pending appeal. So the person might have been out just on a signature bond, but now the judge wants a house or something like that. And the reason is that because people who lose either criminal cases or civil cases want the delay. Everybody wants the delay. And so if Trump could not pay somebody for 3 or 4 years and then show up at the end where he's lost everything and said, wow, guys, I'm broke. I'm really sorry you don't get the money and I lost the appeal, but I'm broke. You can't have that under the rule of law. So there's nothing unfair that you have to put up a bond. Now, the bond's one of two things. You can put up real property. He certainly doesn't want to put up $500 million of real property. He doesn't want to say, okay, here's Trump Tower, here's 40 Wall Street. If I lose the appeal, it's yours. He doesn't want to do something that definitive. He wants to put up a bond where if he loses the appeal, which remember, 2 or 3% of appeals succeed, okay? So he's got a 98% chance of losing and having to pay. So if you're the bonding company and you've agreed to pay $500 million plus interest, let's say it's $600 million by then, Mark, okay? They don't want friends in high places. They don't want favors. They have stockholders who want to know what the hell we did with our $600 million, because if the state wins the appeal, and they have a 98% chance of winning it, statistically probably, then if you're Chubb, you have to pay $600 million. And if Trump doesn't have it, the assets all turn out to be worthless. You have to dig in your shareholders' pockets if you're Chubb and pay the $600 million. That's why no one's going to give him the money, because he hasn't posted enough that's going to make them feel secure that if they have to pay $600 million, they won't lose, that they'll really have stuff from Trump that's worth $600 million, so they won't have to pull it out of their pocket, their own pocket. Okay. That Trump has not come up with. Now, Trump has a couple of avenues at this point. One is to go to the appeals court, which he's doing, and have the appeals court say, well, there's something extraordinary about your case, so you don't have to post the $500 million. Or, of course, he wants to kind of schnorr them, as we say in Yiddish. He wants to schnorr them into taking $100 million when he owes $500 million. But you can't write that decision. There's no appellate judge who can write the decision that, well, because it's Donald Trump and because this and that and the other thing, the man has a judgment against him for $500 million. We're going to say $100 million's fine. It's like if somebody said my client is to post $100,000 bail, and I said, well, here's 20, the clerk would look at me, the courts would look at me. So the other thing that he could do, but it's complicated, is he could borrow the money. And I think that takes you to your question about the Saudis and the Russians. That would have to be disclosed. The nature of things, if he got that from some dark money outlet, these journalists, if they're worth their salt, would get to the bottom of it.
But wait. Let me stop you there. That's a huge distinction. You're saying it's one thing for journalists to uncover it. It's another thing for the law to require disclosure.
Well, I'm not quite sure, because remember, you've got to show up with a bond, and the bond has to be accepted. Okay. The bonding agency, I think you could not fail to disclose what the bonding agency was. But if Trump shows up on Monday and he says, you know what, forget the bonding agency. What did you say? 450 million. So I've got to post that plus a premium for interest and everything else. Here's $550 million. Of course, the question would be, who the hell just lent him $550 million? I'm not sure the law would require him to say where the $550 million was from. If it was in cash and it was good and it was posted with the court. Sure. Now, in criminal cases, in federal criminal cases, they say they want to know the source, because they're always worried that, let's say, the cartel is now bailing out the guy and the guy is being paid for his silence, or he's going to run away and the cartel just bailed him out. They want to know in federal criminal cases who posted the bail, who's the real source of the bail. But here, Trump would be the source of the bail. It would be a civil bail. It is a civil case after all. And now he's got the $500 million. So it might be that the journalists would have to get to the bottom of that. But I think that they would. And then there's these disclosure forms, whether Trump, he'd have to get back into the presidency. Oh, my God. And then he'd have to have this requirement, which he'd have to obey. But you'd have to fill out these forms, that who are you indebted to? And he'd be indebted, $550 million to the same Saudi princes, let's say, who gave his son-in-law the $2 billion to play with, despite the fact that his son-in-law had very little investment experience. I just think it's too hot. I think it's too hot to do that. So my prediction on it is that Trump probably he tries to get more time from the Attorney General, or he does really let the clock run out because he likes the political view of them seizing the properties. That would not be putting padlocks on there. There wouldn't be, New York State troopers in the lobby of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue.
I didn't realize that. I thought that is the way they proceed. You're saying
no, they would put some kind of liens on it. They would go give notice. They would maybe collect the rents, for instance, right? That might be one thing they could do. All the people who pay rents, let's say the stores in the lobby of Trump Plaza, would pay the rent to the Attorney General. And they would, they have a receiver. You got to remember that, Mark. They have a receiver on the whole Trump organization, this retired federal judge. So to make a long story short, it wouldn't be that dramatic. Going to a golf course is less dramatic than going through the lobby of 40 Wall Street. And I have to say one last thing for the people who don't remember it from my last appearance. I worked on Wall Street only one summer in my life. That's the thing you do if you're a law student and you have good grades and they hire you. You work as a summer associate. I worked as a summer associate in 1979 at 40 Wall Street. It's a beautiful big building. And, they had on one of the stations, they had how much money he actually has in those buildings. And it's not like he owns the entire building and gets all the rents. So apparently the biggest Trump Tower is I think the biggest moneymaker. 40 Wall Street's another big moneymaker. But in some of them, he only has an interest of like $20 million. I mean, he's got like his own penthouse or his own, he's got the lobby. He's maybe got the retail space. So I think what they would do is they would put liens on them and they would say, okay, now we're up to $100 million, Mark. We're still not at $500 million. And I just have to think that Trump would. I think he may not have much choice but to let it happen, because he's got. If he's going to borrow the money, who's really going to lend it to him? Some multi-billionaire who's going to mark himself or herself forever as a Trump enabler, and the boycotts that would. I don't know. I don't know how this really works. I don't know how much. Let's say Musk is connected with Tesla. Okay, but it used to be so cool to have a Tesla. I don't know, a Tesla from Musk, who's the only person who in the world who bailed Trump. And as I say, Trump owes the money. Here's the argument I want to hear, because this is what you have to say in a federal case. Let's say you want your client out on bail. If your client's not a flight risk, they don't think they're going to run away. They're not a danger to the community. They're not like doing ongoing scams or something like that. That's the average person. Then the Court of Appeal says, no, your client still doesn't get out because the presumption of regularity that you lost this lawsuit, okay? What are your issues? What are your substantial issues on appeal? What should we be looking for? And they decide that within weeks, whether somebody gets bail pending appeal or not. If you remember Peter Navarro, Chief Justice Roberts just had that. And it's not that much work. He said, tell me your issues. You tell me yours, and the government tells you why there aren't issues. And he said, you know what? You don't have issues. He didn't need to read all the briefs and hear all the arguments. He read what he needed to read from both sides. And he said, Peter Navarro, you don't have an argument on appeal. I can see that. And I haven't heard anyone say, what are Trump's arguments on appeal? That's another reason why the appeals court, I don't think is going to give him any kind of break. Because remember, he didn't have a jury trial because he didn't ask for one. The judge seemed to handle this case in a very measured way. He let Trump testify. They had rules what Trump could testify to. They made sure it was relevant. He let the sons testify. This Weisselberg testified on behalf of Trump. You remember that? And they determined that it was perjurious. I think he actually got, but he let that testimony in. He dealt with it. He gave it what weight he thought it deserved. I don't remember. Maybe you remember, Mark, if you followed it more closely than I did, or some of your listeners did, and they want to write in. I don't remember what were the big issues in that case. The one with Engoron.
Sure.
It looked like a very clean trial. He said that his apartment was worth 3 times what it was. He said his apartment was 3 times the size that it was. They had chapter and verse of how he cheated those banks. And the fact that some of the banks, or maybe all the banks, ended up making money. I pointed this out before, Mark. You and I get together and we claim we're worth $2 billion, and we get someone to lend us $2 billion, and we get lucky enough that this thing that we had no collateral on went to $2.5 billion. Everyone in America knows you can't do that. We just lied to a bunch of banks. And if we can't gamble with their money, that's swindling them. We can't gamble with their money. And if the bet loses, they are holding the bag completely because you and I don't have $2 billion or anything close to it. That's totally wrong what Trump did. And there's the other aspect of it, that he then took the same assets that he overvalued to get those fancy loans and get better loan rates. And then he told the IRS and the state tax authorities, I'm broke. I can't pay. I'm a billionaire who can't pay taxes because it's worth $1 billion to the people I want to give me money, but it's worth nothing, tax people. Let me tell you my other theory of why it's really worth nothing to you guys. You shouldn't make me pay any taxes.
I want to get to the Texas border in a moment, but I just want to, because you mentioned Engoron. Apparently, Engoron yesterday expanded the role of the monitor overseeing the Trump organization on these funds that you're talking about to include a more expansive oversight of Trump's real estate business's internal financial practices, and has ordered the Trump organization to supply detailed information to that monitor about its efforts to obtain bonds to cover judgments. So again, to the question of could you find a Saudi angel or a Russian angel to come in and take care of this debt, it wouldn't likely get past the monitor without somebody knowing about it anyway. So I want to get to the Texas border, the back and forth being done with the Supreme Court and the appellate court. Maybe you can speak to that situation, just again, the legal logistics associated with it. It's always weird. We're now in this time where, and we talked about it last time when you visited, we're talking about judge shopping, or we're talking about these judges that are in these single judge counties where they'll put a stay in and that'll affect the entire country, et cetera. This is not so different in that the Supreme Court makes a ruling and then the Texas appellate court makes a ruling. Can you speak to this entire situation? This is about, the last thing I'll say, just to remind everyone, this is about essentially a vigilantism on the part of the sheriffs and other law enforcement authorities in Texas to actually deport immigrants who are illegally in the state of Texas for being there illegally. It's usually a federal jurisdiction, but this attempt is on the part of Texas to have local authorities deal with it.
One of their big obstacles is that Mexico won't take the people back. So they don't have really sort of anywhere to deport them to. The president of Mexico gave a speech and said this would be like one of our states in the middle of Mexico suddenly deciding what laws ought to apply to Texans in the middle of that state in Mexico. You know, one nation deals with another nation. And the fact that Texas wouldn't have anywhere to send them is another problem that I don't think that they've really thought about. And then a lot of the people who are coming in right now into Texas are not from Mexico at all. They're from, they're from Haiti, they're from other countries, they're from Venezuela. So they've come through Mexico, but it is totally fraught to think about what Texas would actually do. You're allowed to agree to voluntarily depart. They send all those buses into New York City and to Denver or wherever. I don't know if they're going to be sending planes to Haiti and Venezuela. I don't know if the taxpayers of Texas are going to think that's such a great idea to pay for that. But, this whole question, and what you said about the going to these tiny little divisions where there's only one judge, like the way that they went to this judge in Amarillo, or in fact, the way that Trump went to Judge Cannon in Fort Pierce, the only one in that division. The Judicial Conference has decided to do something about that. And this is one time that Chief Justice Roberts gets a shout out because he's on the Judicial Commission. He's the head of the Judicial Commission. It's also the chief judges from the appeals circuits all around the country. And they decided to do something sensible about this judge shopping where you try to get a statewide or nationwide injunction by taking it to the person you know is the friendliest judge anywhere to your cause. That's obviously wrong, whether the left or the right does it. The judicial branch did it. It was effective because Minority Leader McConnell freaked out and basically said, no, but we studied the country with all of these super right-wing judges so they could do exactly this. Don't you judges, some of you are Republicans, don't you get it? And the answer is, yeah, we get it. And that's not the way that we bring prestige and respect to the courts.
That's the judge shopping part of it. Okay.
Rampant judge shopping. Now, this last one you asked me about, this one at the border, this is like the federal courts exam. You can get like a point toward your federal courts exam. Any of you are in law school and you're taking federal courts or constitutional law, listen up, because this one really had a circuitous route, to use the word circuit. So the case starts out in Austin, Texas. It's not judge shop to some tiny little place like Amarillo. Texas passes this law, SB4, which basically says they can take immigration into their own hands. That's very controversial because the Constitution leaves immigration to the federal government, particularly the Congress, but it leaves it to the federal government. We're all one big country. And so to have 50 different states have different immigration policies really doesn't make a lot of sense. And it didn't make sense to the framers of the Constitution. They knew we had states. They knew that states would be interested in what migrants were in those states, but at the same time, they gave the jurisdiction not to the states, but to the federal government. That's not just me saying so. That was the U.S. Supreme Court saying so in the Arizona case about a dozen years ago. And in that Arizona case, Mark, that was the one that was, let me see your papers. And
that was the Joe Arpaio.
Right. And that's the one that people are all scared about. People who think we need to do something about the border, we need to stem this flow, have to realize that these kinds of racial profiling is just a twin of these things. Racial profile comes along with it because they don't go up to people who look like you and me, Mark. They go up to people who are black and brown, especially brown. And that's the problem with the racial profiling. Sure, there's other ways that you could try to do that, but it's very fraught with racial profiling. The Supreme Court realized that. The Supreme Court also realized in the Joe Arpaio, Arizona, Show Me Your Papers case, that it's a federal responsibility. They decided that 5-3. One of the five, RBG, is no longer on there. The court is not 5-3 in the view of Arizona. It may now be 5-4 or even 6-3, the minority view. And so they tried to take that minority view and say, no, they're not at cross purposes in Texas. This is their argument. They're not at cross purposes with what the federal government's doing. They're trying to achieve the same thing as the federal government. So they should be allowed to supplement. Why can't a state supplement the federal government, even if it's the federal government's responsibility? Well, that's nonsense in this situation because people are getting to be aware of what we do at the border. And if you like it or you don't like it, what we do at the border, people do not sneak in, generally speaking. They run right over to a border patrol agent or immigration agent. They run right towards the U.S. official. And the U.S. official takes their name down and paroles them into the United States. So they are not here from that point illegally. Now, people who want to vote on this issue, people who like Trump, think that they should be here illegally. But right now, under the law, they are not here illegally. They're paroled into the United States until they can have their asylum hearing. And of course, with the scarcity of immigration judges and all the other problems, those asylum hearings don't happen for 5 or 6 years. And so the people are effectively here with some kind of permission. So for Texas to take the view that they're all illegals, right, or most of them are illegals, even the people crossing the border, because they say, well, at least give us the limited power, they told the appellate courts, the Solicitor General of Texas, at least give us the power to nab these people as they come across the border. Some of the people coming across the border have already made an appointment for this parole asylum hearing when they cross the border. That's why they're stacked up at the border listening to the Court of Appeals argument in the Fifth Circuit. Can we come? Can we not come? Now, the peculiarities of the case procedurally are that the Austin federal judge says, I'm not allowing this to go into effect. This doesn't look to me like this is going to win on the merits. So I'm deciding this law does not go into effect. He issues a stay of the law going into effect. The Fifth Circuit reverses that stay. So it goes into effect. It goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, you know, this whole case shouldn't be in front of us. They keep the stay in effect. So that's why people say it was legal for 8 hours. But they said, look, you, the Fifth Circuit, got to solve this. It's sending this up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Amy Barrett and Kavanaugh say, no. The Fifth Circuit needs to decide this. So this is the 8 or 10 hours that it's actually legal to enforce this law. But no one can really, get to enforce it because there's so many bureaucratic hurdles. Is the sheriff going to get sued? They want to get further instructions. In that time, it goes back to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit says 2-1. You know what? That judge was right in the first place in Austin. We should stay this thing. And so now, while it's kicking around the courts, it's not going to go into effect. It's not going to change the law down there. And I don't think ultimately, Mark, it's from the questioning of the two judges of the three, or there's a Trumpy judge on there. The Trumpy judge would have let it go into effect. But the two judges, one is from Biden and one is from W, they were very skeptical of it. And I don't think that law is ever going to go into effect because it is at cross purposes with the federal law and the Supreme Court. Now, people say, the Supreme Court doesn't like precedent. So watch this. You're going to watch Dobbs. You're going to watch the guns in the New York pistol case where people are running around with guns at Yankee Stadium and saying that they have a right to get those permits. And this is not a court that really follows precedent. But I think they will follow precedent on this one. The Arizona case is quite clear, and the Constitution is clear. For the people who are textualists and originalists, the Constitution is quite clear, Mark, that this is federal jurisdiction. If you don't like the immigration policy of the country, vote for president, vote for Senate, vote for the House. But Abbott is not part of the federal government, and Abbott, as much as he's trying down there, is not, I think, going to be able to get that law SB4 to go into effect.
It seems straightforward, yeah. I mean, it's a federal jurisdiction. But wow, we covered a lot of territory, David Katz. You've been very generous with your time. I think we hit Otani, we hit New York, seizure, the satisfaction of the bond and traceability of that money. We talked about Georgia and Fani Willis. We talked about the document, the espionage case with Cannon and that craziness there. Wow. I mean, I think, impressive. David Katz rules, says Kathleen Bryant. I agree. So you've kind of snuck some predictions in as expectations. I mean by that, like you expect, or you said I wouldn't be surprised, is what you said, I think, actually, if Trump allowed these seizures to actually happen. Are you ready to make that a prediction, Katsadamas, or what prediction would you like to offer today to us?
I think that there'll be some liens put on properties and that he may have his, rents and receivables collected, again, to get to that amount. People say that maybe he'll drop his appeal, but I don't see any way that he'll drop his appeal. But the effect, I think, will be that his appeal will go forward, and he'll put up the bail that he can. One of the risks that he runs, though, is that they will bar him from appealing. So he's got really tick-tock. He's really got to play his cards right here. But I think his safest thing is to borrow as much money as he can. I do think if he can walk in there with a plan, let's say that he has $300 or $400 million, at some point, it'd be smart for the Attorney General to take it. She's going to win the appeal. And just the optics of having the appeal thrown out because, I had $300 million and they wouldn't take it. Or make some deal that will take the $300 million, but you've got to come up with this much money. Keep his feet to the fire that he's got to get closer to the $500 million amount. So I think if he comes with an offer like that she's got some incentive. I don't think that she likes the optics too much of, New York state troopers going into one of the Trump iconic buildings like 40 Wall Street or Trump Tower. I don't think that she can touch Mar-a-Lago. She'd have to get the cooperation of authorities in Florida. So I think any property that's outside the state of New York, while, in theory, of course, you can collect it. Someone can't just stick all their assets someplace and go, ha, screw all your judgments. Although people have tried to do it in Florida and some other, shall I call them sanctuary states for debtors? They have tried to do that in sanctuary states for debtors, but it's not worth her while to fool around with Florida. She'll go after the New York assets, but it won't be with New York state troopers going into the lobby. It'll be by filing liens and doing things in the courts. And at some point she may argue, if he really only comes with $100 million, that's all he ever comes with, they'll probably throw his appeal out because you have to post the bond in order to appeal. You got to get the delay. The thing is, you don't get the delay unless you post the bond, you post the money.
Absolutely wild. David, thank you. I look forward to seeing you across the media landscape between now and next time, but always love our time together. David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you. Hi, Kim and your staff, too.
Yeah, right on, David, right on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Well, we are in the middle of a big showdown, as you may know. I mean, there is something going on this show that only happens this month.
It's a tight race.
It's been an annual event, yes. And we've had a couple of walkovers in the early going, but this is not one of them.
I can't believe it! Mark's Madness.
We have two fan favorites going up against each other in Mark's Madness. Either you vote for...
Can you let him finish, sir?
Let him finish, sir. Or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
Again, vote for...
Can you let him finish, sir?
Or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
It's finished.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Or...
My bad. I'm sorry.
You can vote until midnight tonight in the community section of our YouTube channel, and you'll decide. You'll decide the winner. And we go on. We play Mark's Madness out. The bracket continues. Wait a minute. This just in from the commissioner's office.
Albert, thank you.
Wow, my bad, I'm sorry, is pulling way ahead, Commish, huh?
Right? Yeah.
I think you guys know, other than what, I probably hit my bad, I'm sorry, the most. and it's for one reason. I always get the best reactions out of Mark because I try to time it when he least expects it. So that's the one
true.
that gets me going.
So it's your fault that's become part of my speech. Anytime I do something wrong, immediately, my bad, I'm sorry.
It is.
I mean, there's a lot of people who make mistakes on the show, and we talk a lot of people about people who make a lot of mistakes too. So it's just the perfect drop.
Yeah, it's such a versatile drop. It can be used in so many stories.
My bad. I'm sorry.
But I love Let Him Finish.
Can you let him finish, sir?
I just love Let Him Finish.
Can you let him finish, sir?
But it is true that for pure flexibility and for making me laugh, that my bad, I'm sorry is...
my bad, I'm sorry.
And anyway...
The people get it right. That's right.
So far, again, you can vote until midnight tonight in the community section of our YouTube channel. Wow. I hate to end this show on time, but it looks like I will be ending it on time.
Wow.
I thought I had an email, and maybe I'll share it with you guys tomorrow. I had a couple of emails that were maybe put up the email address while I'm looking, Albert, if you would please, and that way I can both share an email and I had a long email. I think it's a little too long to read today. I will read it tomorrow.
Was it good or bad?
It was good. It was primarily good. Yeah.
Pique my interest with these things, and I want to know what the people said.
Albert, did you get the from our listener in Washington, D.C.? Did you get that email that I forwarded on to you?
I got a couple of Florida submissions. Let me look for the.
You didn't see the Washington, D.C.?
I did get the. I did get the Washington, D.C.
Okay, there are pictures in there too.
Mm-hmm.
From Franco. Yeah. Just would like to leave everybody smiling. There you go. That's our nation's capital, everyone. Come on.
Beautiful. Look at that.
Mark, hi. I'm a big fan of the show and just wanted to say that I'm at your old stomping grounds. Yeah, I was raised in Washington, D.C. What a beautiful place. And the cherry blossoms are blooming. This is the perfect time to be there. They couldn't have picked a better time. I'll be catching your program soon. Franco from Danville, and there they are.
Nice. Oh,
standing there right before and looking at, you see over their shoulders in the distance, you see the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
God, they are in a really good
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah. Really cool pictures, Franco, and thank you very much for sending them. There's Lincoln, a Lincoln Memorial, the site of so many great protests in the past and celebrations in the past. That's the reflecting pool, as it's called. Oh, I didn't see these pictures. Where did these come from? Oh,
cool.
Georgetown, I guess, is where they're going. Maybe to. I didn't see. Well, let me just see if there's anything more. No.
Love it.
Yeah, really
I love
cool.
when people send us vacation pictures.
The
This
rare
is great.
Wright bicycle. That's the Wright Brothers bicycle. Didn't mean to interrupt, but that's the Wright Brothers bicycle. Yeah, no, of course. It's always great to see people everywhere enjoying themselves. And Washington, D.C. is a great place. And I'm so glad they saw this. This is clearly indicated from their pictures. If you go to Washington, D.C., definitely see the city at night. See the monuments at night. I'm not saying they're not great during the day also, but at night, it's special, man. Right. It's special. The water, the reflections, the lighting, it's magnificent. It's a beautiful city, particularly at night. So I'm glad they got a chance to see it that way. The Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com is our address. Albert, well done. Thank you for hustling that together. I wanted to get that on the air. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, Kim, I think we've learned a lot about each other today.
I think so, too. Chit, chit, chit.
Yeah, we've learned a lot about each other.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot about our hopes, our dreams. We've learned a lot about Mark's madness and what really has a chance to go all the way. A handful of people are really in the hot hunt, but it's wide open still. Wouldn't you say, Kamish?
It's open, so don't lose hope yet. It's too early.
Exactly.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been an important 2 hours, really.
See it at night and you can get mugged. That is not the kind of attitude. Where is the love and support?
Come on.
Gosh, it's a very tough
My
crowd,
bad.
always.
I'm sorry.
After Party Live's going down with Kim right now. And tomorrow, it's Florida, everybody.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Florida, Snyder.
Out of time. Bye.
Politics with Shore. All of it tomorrow. We'll see you then. Until then, bye-bye.